10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. We have ignition.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program RP-0. We are starting today off kind of right where we left off last time with our Triton lander, prospectively anyway, making a course correction burn to adjust its heading to do a nice gravity assist from Jupiter and get it on its way to Neptune. Now, if you remember from last episode, I know it was a while ago, many apologies, the transfer time was going to be something like 17,000 days, which, you know, like give or take 50 years or so, which is a very, very, very long time. But it's fine because we can send heavier things like this and launch multiple missions for relatively cheap, just to make sure that we're going to get to where we're going, and boop, there it is. So we've kind of just settled into the fact that this is going to be a 50-year ordeal, and, you know, I think we're just going to have to be okay with that. Neither transfer is very good, in that in both cases, going to Jupiter and to Neptune, we are flying way past and then coming back down before our intercept, which is going to... Well, hopefully it'll pay out on the back end, but we'll get to that. And now we have out here on the pad an RA9. We're just going to go ahead and try to get this little guy to orbit without having ever checked, you know, really much of anything. This is our prospective Neptune atmospheric probe, booster set cleared away. This vehicle always tip-top of reliability and just an absolute dream to fly. I think I've mentioned that quite a lot, but yeah, this thing is relatively simple and should be pretty easy to get to where it's going had we not had to do this. Yeah, we're about 1 kilometer per second shy of hitting orbit. The tonnage to orbit on this thing was, you know, never great, but it leaves us about 5.6 kilometers per second left in the tank, which normally would be pretty dang good for most stuff, but in this case it's not. Our transfer delta V required is going to be like 7 and some change, or 6.2 I think is what we're looking at here. So unfortunately that mission is going to be kind of a failure, but with a couple weeks left in the window and plenty of RA9s sitting around doing not a whole lot right now, we're just going to up the ante. We're going to update our tank types. We're going to go from 4 boosters to 6 boosters, and just make sure everything here is you know, built to suit. We're switching out for some lighter balloon tanks to try to edge out that excess delta V to see if we can put that entire, which I guess it's an updated HV upper stage now because we've got different RL10 engines up there doing their thing. We'll just have to make sure that everything here is, you know, up to snuff by changing our boosters out to balloon tank, changing our core tank out to a balloon tank, and, you know, exploiting balloon tanks. This does up our cost a little bit. This rocket now costs 83,000 to produce, up from like 35,000. But the retrofit time will only be about 2 days, which is incredible because they basically have to build an entirely new rocket in order to make this thing a possibility. But it does look like that we'll still be able to get it out in time for this launch window. So switching out again to the launch pad, we have a DN6 on the pad. This one is carrying, I believe it's a sister mission to our Triton Explorer, or I think this might be our glider. Yes. This should, in fact, be another origami glider that is hopefully going to do some science flying around at Neptune before it meets a horrible and terrible demise somewhere in the atmosphere due to crushing pressures, something like that. I think we actually scrapped the sister mission in favor of the Neptune atmospheric mission. Yep. There you can see our payload now that boosters are gone and fairings are away. I'm glad I can remember exactly what I did all those so many weeks ago. But this DN6 should have more than enough to get this on target. We've got 7.5 kilometers per second in that B upper stage. Single HG3 engine should have absolutely no problem propelling this along. We just need to get our waypoint set up, and this is the part where I was going to try to dial in a better transfer, at least to Jupiter, in hopes that we could get this encounter in, something less than 50 years. Unfortunately, just wasn't really going to happen. Between my lack of skill and Mech Jeb's impreciseness, we're just kind of stuck with this being a 50-year ordeal, which is, I guess, why we went with RTGs. But should they complete their missions, these will be about the longest running missions that we've ever had in this program, without exception, which is pretty amazing. We're launching here in 2003-ish, and yeah, they'll not get there until the 2050s. So I look forward to episode 2700 when we can actually do these encounters and get these missions wrapped up. That'll be fun. So predictably, I've overshot lots of things, and so we now need to make some corrections to see if, one, we can't handle this plane change that has come out of practically nowhere, and get this assist out to Neptune figured out. It should not be that much Delta V. We still have about 800 left in the tank, and we had no qualms about hauling this B upper stage with us if needed. But, it's not like it's going to hurt anything. It's just, not going to help anything either. So we did go take care of some logistics and then come back a few days later after we had left Earth SOI, because this would make plotting this maneuver node just a little bit easier. I say that even though KSP has no interest in letting me plot maneuver nodes. But once we get that little maneuver node issue solved, we are actually able to plot out the node. We'll start dialing in with Precise node, trying to get this sorted out, because this is still not a very great maneuver node, I should say. That one was looking at like 1 kilometer per second, but it does look like we can sort all of this out for a little under 200 meters per second, and we'll just set our timer to take care of that when the time is appropriate, and we'll jump back to the launch pad for our new, lovingly dubbed RA-69. The 6 booster variant that we slapped together just a few minutes ago, really. Waiting on the launch pad now for its inclination with the moon to be somewhat reasonable. We'll just time warp it a little bit, let it shake on the pad, because, that's how you get the kinks worked out. I don't know. Anyway, we're just making sure that our clamps are keeping things topped off and fueled, because that's their only job, obviously, before we get our relative inclination with the moon in a stable place where we can go ahead and start to make this launch. We're at about 0.29 degrees. We are just go ahead and go for liftoff, and just a little bit of wobbles here and there, so we're going to limit the gimbal axis on our booster engines, which I should have done in the VAB. Honestly, those booster engines don't even really need a gimbal. We've got a pretty... as long as we don't want roll control. We got a pretty good gimbal on the core engine, and that should be more than enough. But amazingly, the flight characteristics of this vehicle are still pretty dang good. I do have to kind of battle with it a little bit, trying to keep this relative inclination in check, and all the extra TWR certainly does help with really just getting this thing airborne. And the boosters, because of their aerodynamic qualities, just separate in the cleanest, most perfectest way ever, falling clean and away and tumbling back down for their splashdown in the ocean. And now, without roll control, we'll just tip slightly, ever so much off our axis before setting the fairings, booting up our comms, and hopefully getting this thing the rest of the way to orbit. I would like to keep as much of that 8.8 kilometers per second in our new HV upper stage intact as possible. It's well more than enough what we need, but this probe has no propellant of its own, and we would really like it to arrive last, which is why we tried to launch it first, but then everything went badly. But of course, if you launch it first, it gets there last. You launch it last, it'll probably get there first, because orbital mechanics makes so much sense. Yeah, that's pretty much it exactly. But yes, because it doesn't have its own propellant, it probably cannot insert itself into orbit. Its flight plan was always to just pile into Neptune's atmosphere, and we need to have something in orbit to relay that signal, because it's probably not going to happen on the side that's facing Earth. So our satellite placement is positively crucial for this mission's success. Now, we will have some options as far as, slowing it down a little bit before it gets to Neptune to make sure that our other missions can be in place first. And hopefully, I mean, it's still not a guarantee that we'll have a signal when we get there or that anything will be in proper position, but it's much better than if it weren't. Anyway, core stage is separated away. We are plotting our transfer to Jupiter for our slingshot, and you can see liquid hydrogen just rapidly boiling away. Were this a real life thing, this HV upper stage there'd just be no point in keeping it attached. There probably still isn't. It doesn't have its own power generation, and that new avionics core we have installed there is quite power hungry. We only have 2 RTGs aboard this mission, and I don't think that's going to provide nearly enough power to keep that very electron-hungry avionics package satisfied for anything more than just a few hours. So really smart money's just on ditching it, but we're going to hang on to it just in case we need to slow down a little bit. Those RCS quads do not have very much fuel, and we're really going to want them to make sure that we can maintain but first stability while transversing Neptune's atmosphere. So it's not a terribly long burn on these RL-10s. I think we're way, way, way under their rated runtime. Actually, maybe we could have gone down to 2, 3, maybe 2 engines, and saw a very small benefit in our Delta V at the cost of a longer runtime. But I don't think we were really pushing the upper limits of the runtime on these. So I don't know. That might be something we have to think about for later, whenever we want to send a really cheap package a really long way away on a really constrained timeline sometime in the near future. I don't doubt it'll happen again. I like flying this little guy, and I would like to maybe keep doing it. And of course, in my inability to pay attention, I have completely blown past our encounter with Jupiter. Go figure. These things, yeah, just, they kind of happen. So we're going to try to adjust our intercept here in hopes that we can still make this encounter with Neptune, and hopefully, I mean, everything else is going to take 50 years. There's no point in rushing this one because it needs to get there last anyway, so we're kind of just like locked into this timeline now. But yeah, once again, we have about a 3.5 degree relative inclination, so I spend an completely undue amount of time here tweaking at nodes and trying to make some kind of intercept work here. It just does not seem to be going as well for this flight as it did for some of the other flights, so yeah, expect there to be a lot of just kind of diddling with these nodes. If there was a time for me to actually break down and use precise node, or Mech Jeb's precise maneuver planner, this was probably it. Unfortunately, I'm not too smart whilst in the middle of doing all of these things sometimes, so, there's that. But I was also really hoping to see if, like, just maybe there was a chance to get this window done in less time, because we don't need to spend the Delta V to actually capture into orbit. So if we come in screaming hot and fast, then it's okay, because we're just going to bleed off that speed on entry. And so I just thought I'd just go ahead and screw around with it a little bit, but it's, not shaping up too well. And honestly, the intercept that I have over here is way, way, way down the line. So I think, honestly, maybe that was me thinking I need to make sure that it comes there last, so we'll just let it take an extra 200 years? Yeah, no. This is only 14,000 days, which is kind of counter to our planning, but we're going to go for it just in case, because that might mean that we have more room on this window, that we can do a few more launches should we want to really just overwhelm crews from like 50 or 60 years from now. So the entire maneuver node is 338 meters per second, which will leave us with a little more than a kilometer per second left in the tanks. should we decide to hang on to this thing. I don't ever think I actually checked the electric charge to see how rapidly it was burning off, but we make very quick work of that 300 meters per second. Thank you, 5.9 TWR. That's pretty dang cool, but we'll top this off on RCS and then untop it off. Plant ourselves a little wake-up node just to make sure that we're still going to go where we want to. Currently, the answer is no, but it's a pretty close flyby. It's also not timed very well, so we're just going to re-unlock our RCS fuel just to try to top this off a little bit, but of course, you know, Mech Jeb has other plans for us here. So once again, we need to set our maneuver nodes to see what the hell is happening. But yeah, just like a couple of meters per second adjustment at Jupiter will drastically change how you approach the target. And unfortunately, by unlocking that RCS fuel, it really kind of screwed this up. And now we have what is quite possibly the worst intercept in the history of anything ever. 1,500 days to get to Jupiter and something like 20,000 to get to Neptune, because we're just going to overshoot it by a whole lot. So we wanted it to show up last. That's a great way to do it. I'm just going to not really take that for an answer just yet and try instead to completely refactor this intercept yet again, and trying very hard to, you know, at least get this within the same generation of people that will be working on it, and this one's actually not too bad. That puts us right at about that 17,000 day mark, or, you know, something very similar for about 3 meters per second. So make your adjustments early, so you won't have to make them often, and they won't be all that expensive. They are, however, a little hard to chase with, and we're rapidly using up the fuel on this HV upper stage, so we'll queue in the RCS thrusters from our package actual, and then just try to get this lined up about a half a meter per second out. And of course, RCS is going to fight me on this every which way, so we'll just kind of dial it in. We'll turn off the RCS, we'll kill the maneuver node, and just make the correction at Jupiter. Yeah, it'll be 17 meters per second, but it's totally worth it to not have to deal with some of these issues any longer. So anyway, I think that concludes our Neptune window, although we still have the option. I think we got a week or two left. We could probably get one more out the door if we wanted to. More on that next time. That's going to do it for this episode, everyone. Thank you so much for hanging out. I really do appreciate it, and I'll see all of you in the next one. So until then, see you later.